They laughed at her strange weapon and her quiet, nervous habits, until a veteran combat instructor whispered something that changed how the entire galaxy sees humanity. The main shooting facility aboard Galactic Defense Station Vanguard smelled of burnt propellant and old sweat. I, Commander Vex of the Trinian Military Council, stood with my armored arms folded, watching yet another class of new soldiers stumble through their basic weapon qualification. 47 galactic cycles of training experience had taught me a simple truth. Every species believes it's special until the targets start moving erratically. "Next shooter, step forward," ordered Rangemaster Thrag, his forearms gesturing impatiently toward the firing line. That's when she walked up. The human woman was maybe 1.7 meters tall, perhaps 60 kilograms fully equipped. Her auburn hair was tied back in a simple band, swaying as she moved. What drew my attention wasn't her size. It was the absurd collection of hardware attached to her firearm. It looked like someone had bolted a sensor array onto a hunting rifle, added lenses that belonged on an orbital telescope, then thought, let's double the attachments just to be certain. A folding bipod extended from the forend. Strange cylindrical gadgets protruded from multiple rail mounts. The scope alone probably cost more than my dress uniform. Recruit Jorn, seated next to me in the viewing room, made a wet, snorting sound. "Look at the human's toy. Did she raid a supply depot before showing up?" "Overcompensation," grunted Sergeant Vorax, a four-armed reptilian known for his brutal honesty. "Weak creatures always bring excessive gear, as if extra accessories can fix biological inferiority." I stayed quiet, though I admit my antennae twitched in mild amusement. The human, her name badge read Elena Cruz, began preparing her station with obsessive care. She extended the bipod, tweaked it, reset it, then verified it a third time. She pulled out a small handheld computer and pointed it downrange. She consulted a weather-beaten notebook filled with handwritten numbers and diagrams. "This is a timed qualification," Thrag announced, his patience visibly fading. "You have 3 minutes to hit 12 pop-up targets at unknown distances. Begin whenever you're ready." Elena, to her credit, refused to rush. She settled behind her rifle with a deliberation that would have gotten her killed in real combat. Her body position looked awkward to my eyes. Humans lack the natural stability of a four-legged stance. Yet somehow she seemed to fuse with the ground, becoming part of the firing platform. Jorn leaned toward me, lowering his voice. 50 credits says she misses half of them. 100 says she asks for a restart after her first miss," Vorax added. I studied the human more closely. Something about her stillness felt off. Not wrong, just different. Patient. Predatory, even. But humans weren't predators. They were scavengers, endurance hunters at best. No natural claws, no armored hide, no real biological weapons. "Ready?" Elena said, her voice steady. The first target appeared at 200 meters. Basic pop-up silhouette. 3-second exposure. Easy. The noise from her rifle was unexpected, not a sharp crack but a deep thump that seemed to shove the air aside. Before my secondary eyelids could fully close, the target registered a clean chest impact. Target 2 appeared instantly. 300 meters angled. The rifle thumped again. Hit. Jorn's snorting stopped. Targets 3 through 5 appeared together at distances between 150 and 450 meters. Elena's movements became a smooth cycle. Find the target, inhale, pause, press the trigger, cycle the bolt, find the next. Each action flowing into the next without wasted motion. 3 shots, 3 hits, all center mass. "Lucky," Vorax muttered, but his secondary arms had stopped their dismissive waving. Target 6 appeared at 520 meters, partly hidden behind a barrier. Only a small section of the silhouette showed. Elena fired. Hit. Target 7, 8, 9. Distances now pushing 650 meters. Some targets visible for only 2 seconds. Thump, thump, thump. Hit, hit, hit. I found myself leaning forward, my tactical analysis routines activating against my will. The human wasn't just shooting. She was interpreting the battlefield. Before each shot, her breathing would stop, her body would settle, and the rifle would discharge at what seemed like the mathematically perfect instant. Target 10 appeared at 730 meters, a distance where wind, temperature, spin drift, and a dozen other variables turned shooting into advanced calculus. Elena didn't check a computer or a heads-up display. She made a tiny adjustment to her scope, settled, and fired. The target registered a hit in the primary kill zone. Impossible, Bjorn said flatly. The wind alone at that distance. She's compensating manually, I heard myself say. Watch her barrel position before each shot. She's reading conditions and adjusting in real time. Target 11 appeared at 850 meters, moving left to right at combat speed. This target was designed to humble overconfident recruits, to teach them the limits of standard infantry weapons. Most shooters never even reached this stage. Elena tracked the movement. Her rifle followed smoothly, almost lazily. For what felt like an eternity, she didn't fire. The target kept moving, eating up her remaining time. Then, in the half-second before the target would have vanished, she pressed the trigger. Through my optic enhancements, I watched the bullet's trajectory. The round seemed to curve ahead of the target, arcing through empty space, until the target moved into exactly that space. The impact registered as a perfect central nervous system hit. Silence filled the observation booth. The kind of silence that follows witnessing something that shouldn't be possible. Target 12 appeared. 980 meters. Elevated. Gusting wind detectable on the atmospheric sensors. Target visible for 2.5 seconds. Elena loaded her last round with mechanical precision. Her eye settled behind the scope. Her breathing slowed until I wondered if she had entered some kind of hibernation state. The rifle fired. For a painful second, nothing happened. At that distance, the bullet's travel time was noticeable, a small eternity where physics and ballistics danced their slow dance. Then the target registered. Not just a hit, but a perfect absolute center mass impact that the scoring computer flagged as a precision shot. 12 for 12. Perfect score. 0 misses. Elena stood, cleared her weapon with practiced efficiency, and turned toward the observation booth where Rangemaster Thrag stood with his jaw hanging at an undignified angle. "Qualification complete, sir," she said, as if this were the most ordinary thing in the universe. Thrag stared at his tablet, then at Elena, then back at his tablet. This must be a malfunction. No one shoots perfect on the advanced qualification. Even our finest Viridian marksmen averaged 9 out of 12. "Would you like me to run it again, sir?" Elena asked. "I have extra ammunition." "That will not be necessary," a new voice interrupted. We all turned. Chief Weapons Instructor Drakkar stood in the observation booth entrance. A Cassian war hero with over 600 combat missions, Drakkar didn't appear for routine qualifications. His scarred hide bore the marks of 4 different wars, and his tactical implant glowed with data streams. He descended to the range floor with measured steps, his attention fixed entirely on Elena and her ridiculous, magnificent rifle. "May I?" he asked, gesturing toward her weapon. Elena hesitated, a flash of something protective crossing her face. Then she carefully engaged the safety, removed the magazine, and handed the rifle to Drakkar. He examined it with the kind of respect usually given to historical artifacts. His clawed fingers traced the modifications, the custom components, the worn finish that spoke of thousands of hours of use. "This is a precision instrument," he said quietly. "Not standard issue. Not even close." "Where did you acquire it?" "I built it, sir," Elena replied. "Assembled it from various components. The barrel is a Krieger match grade in 6.5 Creedmoor. The action is a custom Defiance build. The stock is a Macmillan bedded and reinforced. The scope is a Night Force with custom turrets machined for my personal ballistic data." "You built this yourself?" Drakkar interrupted, genuine surprise in his voice. "A human civilian had access to these parts?" Elena's expression shifted slightly. Not quite a smile, but close. "Humans have a unique relationship with firearms, sir. Where I'm from, precision rifle shooting is a discipline. A sport for some, a lifestyle for others. I've been doing this since I was 12. 12 cycles? Jorn blurted from the booth. "Your species allows juveniles access to weapons?" 12 years, Elena corrected. And yes, supervised at first. My father was a competitive shooter. He taught me that shooting isn't about the weapon. It's about understanding physics, reading the environment, controlling your own biology. The rifle is just the tool that expresses that knowledge. Drakkar handed the weapon back with noticeably more respect than he showed most recruits. How many rounds have you put through this specific rifle? Through this build? About 45,000. Through various rifles over my lifetime? Probably north of 300,000. I stopped counting after the first 100,000. The numbers meant nothing to Jorn or Vorax, but I had served with enough military specialists to understand what those figures represented. That wasn't casual hobby shooting. That was professional-level obsession. Someone who had spent years, decades, perfecting a single skill to an almost pathological degree. Your grouping's at 700 meters, Drakkar continued. What's your average? Depends on conditions. Calm day, half-minute of angle, about 3.5 inches. Windy day, maybe 0.75 MOA if I read it right, 5 inches if I'm having a bad day. More silence. Vorax's secondary arms had begun an involuntary tremor, a reptilian stress response. Drakkar's tactical implant cycled through several colors as he processed this. Most military snipers in the Galactic Defense Force considered 1 minute of angle at 500 meters to be acceptable combat accuracy. Different standards, Elena said with a slight shrug. In precision rifle competition back home, 1 MOA is beginner level. The top shooters run quarter MOA guns and read wind down to half-mile-per-hour variations. When your competition is decided by fractions of an inch at 1,000 yards, you either get very good or you go broke buying ammunition while getting humiliated. She said this without arrogance, just stating facts, which somehow made it worse. Or better. I wasn't sure which. Thrag finally found his voice. You're assigned to standard infantry training. Your file says nothing about specialist qualifications. Because I don't have any, sir. Not military ones anyway. I have some civilian competition wins, a few instructor certifications, but I joined the GDF as a basic recruit. Figured I'd let my performance speak for itself, rather than making claims I couldn't back up. Drakkar's mandibles clicked in approval. A wise approach. Too many recruits arrive with inflated credentials and deflated abilities. He paused, his tactical implant focusing on Elena with unsettling intensity. Tell me, recruit, have you ever engaged a living target? The question hung in the air like a gravitational anomaly. Elena's expression didn't change, but something in her posture shifted. A slight stiffening, barely perceptible tension. No, sir, she said quietly. Paper, steel, and reactive targets only. I've never pointed a weapon at anything I wasn't willing to destroy, and I've only been willing to destroy inanimate objects. The discipline I learned was about precision and control, not killing. Good, Drakkar said, nodding slowly. Then you understand the weight of what you can do. That's more important than the skill itself. He turned to Thrag. I'm appropriating this recruit. She'll be reassigned to the Advanced Marksmanship Program pending full evaluation. Sir, the advanced program is for candidates with specialist training, Thrag protested weakly. She's only been here for 3 weeks. And in 3 weeks, she's demonstrated more fundamental proficiency than most of your graduates achieve in 6 months. Drakkar's tone left no room for argument. I'll handle the administrative details. Crews, report to Range 7 tomorrow at 0600. Bring your rifle and enough ammunition for a full diagnostic session. We'll see exactly what you're capable of. Yes, sir, Elena replied, her voice steady despite what I suspected was significant internal excitement. As she collected her equipment and headed toward the exit, Jorn turned to me with all 3 of his eyes wide. Did that actually just happen? It did, I confirmed, my tactical processors still analyzing what I'd witnessed. But she's human, Vorax said, as if this explained everything. Humans are... they're not. Their military record is practically non-existent on the galactic stage. They've been part of the GDF for less than a decade. No famous warriors, no legendary battles, no reputation beyond being decent support troops. I watched Elena disappear through the range exit, that absurdly equipped rifle slung across her back with casual familiarity. Perhaps, I said slowly. We haven't been paying attention to the right things. We measure species by their technology, their physical advantages, their historical military achievements. But what if a species, what if humans, developed their warfare capabilities differently? Not through superior strength or advanced weapons, but through refinement, obsession, taking simple tools and mastering them to a degree that transcends the tool itself. That's ridiculous, Jorn declared. Warfare requires strength, speed, natural advantages. Does it? I interrupted, surprising myself. Or does warfare require the ability to make your enemy cease functioning, which can be accomplished through strength, yes, or through placing a small projectile in exactly the right location from a distance where the enemy's strength becomes irrelevant? Jorn's breathing slits flared in agitation. You're saying one human with a rifle is equivalent to a Rigelian shock trooper? No, I said carefully. I'm saying one human with a rifle, with 45,000 rounds of practice behind that specific rifle, with the knowledge and dedication to read atmospheric conditions and calculate ballistic solutions in her head, might be considerably more dangerous than a Rigelian shock trooper, at least at any distance beyond arm's reach. We sat in uncomfortable silence as the next recruit, a Viridian with all the proper military bearing and none of Elena's quiet confidence, stepped up to the line with his standard-issue rifle. He managed 6 hits out of 12, which was considered above average. It looked pathetic. That night I accessed the human cultural database, something I confess I had never bothered to do before. If one human civilian could demonstrate such frightening competence with a rifle, what else had we been missing about this species? What I found kept me awake well past my normal rest cycle. Humans, it turned out, had a very unusual relationship with projectile weapons, a relationship spanning thousands of their years. They had taken the simple concept of throwing objects at enemies and refined it into an art form, a science, a cultural phenomenon. They had competitions for shooting precision that made our military qualifications look like children's games. They had civilians who spent their personal resources to achieve levels of marksmanship that exceeded most military standards. And perhaps most disturbing, they did this for fun. They voluntarily spent thousands of their currency units, countless hours, and enormous mental effort to become better at shooting. Not because they were soldiers, not because they needed to hunt for survival, but because they enjoyed the challenge. They enjoyed the pursuit of perfection. What kind of species does that? What kind of species treats the ability to kill at long distance as a recreational hobby? I thought about Elena's calm demeanor, her methodical approach, her complete lack of arrogance despite possessing skills that would make her a legend in most military units. Then I thought about what Chief Instructor Dracar had whispered to Thrag as Elena left the range. I had enhanced auditory sensors. I heard it clearly. Only snipers move like that. Only people who have spent years behind a scope understand stillness that way. The humans have been breeding specialists without even trying, just through their cultural obsessions. He was right. And that thought terrified me far more than any conventional military threat ever had. Range 7 existed in a different reality than the standard qualification courses. Located in the eastern section of Station Vanguard, it stretched across 12 kilometers of varied terrain, complete with atmospheric simulators, elevation changes, and environmental hazards that would make most recruits question their career choices. This was where the Galactic Defense Force trained its precision specialists, the shooters who could eliminate hostile targets before conventional forces even knew combat had begun. I arrived at Uro 5:30, 30 minutes before Elena's scheduled evaluation. Call it professional curiosity. Call it the need to understand what I had witnessed. Honestly, I couldn't explain my own motivations, which troubled me more than I cared to admit. Chief Instructor Dracar stood at the control station, manipulating holographic displays that showed the entire range layout. He noticed my approach but said nothing, simply gesturing toward an observation position. "You're early, Vex," he commented, his tactical implant tracking multiple data streams. "I wish to observe, sir, if permitted." "Permitted," he confirmed. "In fact, I'd value your tactical assessment. You have combat experience in asymmetric warfare scenarios. Tell me what you see." What I saw moments later was Elena arriving with her rifle case and a backpack that probably weighed half her body mass. She wore standard utility fatigues, her hair again pulled back in that simple ponytail, her expression focused but not tense. "Recruit Cruz, reporting as ordered, sir," she announced, snapping a salute that would have satisfied the strictest drill instructor. Drakkar returned the salute. "At ease. Today we determine if yesterday was exceptional performance or standard capability. You'll engage targets at distances from 300 to 1,500 meters under various conditions. You'll have limited time to calculate solutions. You'll face scenarios designed to break concentration and test decision-making under pressure. Questions?" "No, sir." "Ready when you are." Drakkar pulled up the first scenario. Target Alpha, distance 450 meters, wind variable gusting from southwest at 8 to 15 miles per hour. Target exposure 5 seconds. Engage when ready. Elena dropped into position with that same unsettling fluidity, deploying her bipod, settling behind the scope, chambering around with economical precision. For perhaps 3 seconds, she remained absolutely motionless. Then she fired. The target registered a hit in the primary elimination zone slightly left to compensate for wind drift. Time from position to shot, 3.2 seconds, Drakkar noted. Acceptable. Target Beta, distance 700 meters, wind calm. Target is partially obscured behind a barrier, only head and upper torso visible. Assess and engage. Elena adjusted her position fractionally. This time she took 4 seconds before firing. Another perfect hit. Target Gamma, distance 950 meters. Wind crosswind from east, 12 miles per hour sustained. Target moving left to right at walking speed. You have 8 seconds. I watched Elena's breathing pattern change. She settled deeper into her position, tracking the target's movement. 6 seconds elapsed. 7. At 7.5 seconds, her rifle barked. The target registered a hit just as it reached the edge of its travel zone. Adequate, Drakkar said, though his tone suggested he meant considerably more than adequate. Now we increase difficulty. Multiple targets will appear simultaneously at various distances. You'll prioritize based on threat assessment protocols. Targets designated red are high value, yellow are medium value, blue are low value. Your ammunition is limited to 15 rounds. Choose wisely. The range erupted with targets, 12 of them scattered across 1,000 meters of varied terrain. 3 red, 4 yellow, 5 blue. Elena didn't panic. She didn't rush. Instead, she took 2 seconds to scan the entire field through her scope, then began engaging targets in a sequence that took me a moment to understand. She started with the farthest red target at 350 meters, the most difficult shot, the one most shooters would save for last if they attempted it at all. She fired, cycled her bolt, then immediately acquired the second red target at 920 meters. Fired again. The third red target appeared at only 420 meters, almost insultingly close after the previous shots. She put a round through it in less than 2 seconds. Then she methodically worked through the yellow targets, prioritizing by distance and exposure time, rather than simple proximity. The blue targets she ignored completely until all higher value threats were eliminated. Total time, 43 seconds. Total rounds expended, 9. Total hits, 9. You left 3 targets active, Drakkar observed. Low-value targets at close range, sir, Elena replied calmly. In a real scenario, conventional infantry could handle those threats. My limited ammunition is better preserved for targets they cannot effectively engage. Resource management seemed more important than achieving a perfect score. Drakkar's mandibles clicked rapidly, a sign of extreme approval in Cassian body language. Correct assessment. Most recruits empty their weapons trying to hit everything, then find themselves useless when actual high-value targets appear. You think like an asset, not a soldier. Good. He paused, manipulating his controls to configure something new. Now we test your limitations. I'm going to make you fail, Cruz. I need to know where your breaking point exists. Understood, sir. I would expect nothing less. What followed was brutal. Drakkar threw scenarios at Elena that would have overwhelmed veteran shooters. Targets at extreme distances with minimal exposure time, environmental conditions that bordered on impossible, situations requiring split-second decisions where every choice had consequences. Elena missed her first shot at the 90-minute mark, A target at 1,650 meters in gusting winds with only a 3-second exposure window. Her round passed just left of the silhouette, missing by perhaps 15 centimeters. She didn't curse, didn't show frustration. She simply chambered another round and waited for the next target. "Why did you miss?" Drakkar asked immediately. "Misjudged the wind gradient at distance, sir," Elena replied without hesitation. "I compensated for the wind speed at my position but failed to account for the increased velocity at the target's elevation. Environmental reading error, not mechanical failure." "Correct. Again, same target, same conditions." This time Elena took an extra second. I saw her eyes flick to a small indicator on her scope, then back to the target. When she fired, the hit registered perfectly. Better. What changed? I used the mirage patterns visible through the scope to estimate wind speed at the target, rather than relying on conditions at my position. More accurate data input, better solution. Drakkar's tactical implant cycled through several colors. "You can read mirage for wind estimation. That's an advanced technique rarely used outside specialized units. It's standard in long-range competition, sir. When you're shooting targets the size of dinner plates at a mile, you learn to read every environmental indicator available: mirage, vegetation movement, dust patterns, even the way your own heat waves interact with the sight picture. Everything tells you something." I found myself leaning forward, fascinated despite my better judgment. This human, this small, seemingly fragile creature, spoke about reading an environment with the same intensity my species used when discussing territorial conquest. Drakkar continued the evaluation for another hour. He introduced moving targets, electronic countermeasures, simulated stress scenarios with combat sounds and incoming fire. Elena handled each challenge with the same methodical approach, sometimes succeeding brilliantly, occasionally failing but always analyzing and adapting. At the 3-hour mark, Drakkar finally called a halt. "Enough. Clear your weapon and approach the observation station." Elena complied, her movements showing the first signs of fatigue. Maintaining absolute stillness and concentration for 3 hours took a physical toll, regardless of species. When she reached the station, Drakkar pulled up a holographic display showing her complete performance metrics. Hit percentage 87% across all scenarios. Average time to first shot 3.8 seconds. Longest successful engagement 1,190 meters. Decision-making score 92% optimal choices. "These numbers," Drakkar said slowly, "would qualify you for immediate placement in our Tier 2 sniper program. Tier 1 remains reserved for candidates with actual combat experience, but your raw skill is undeniable. However, before I make any recommendations, I need you to answer something honestly. Why are you here?" Elena blinked, clearly not expecting the question. "Sir, you possess skills that took years to develop. Skills that have no practical civilian application in human society, unless I'm misinformed. You could have remained on Earth, competed in your sport, lived comfortably. Instead, you joined a military organization, left your planet and volunteered for an infantry position that would never utilize your actual capabilities. Why?" For the first time since I had observed her, Elena's composure cracked slightly. Not much, just a brief hesitation, a flicker of something deeper behind her eyes. "Because precision rifle shooting taught me something, sir," she began carefully. "It taught me that humans are not naturally gifted at very much. We're not the strongest, not the fastest, not the toughest. We don't have built-in weapons or armor or enhanced senses. What we have is the ability to learn, to practice, to take something we're mediocre at and become exceptional through sheer dedication." She gestured to her rifle. "This weapon doesn't make me special. Thousands of humans can shoot as well as I can. Some shoot better. What makes the difference is that we, as a species, don't accept our limitations as permanent. We see a challenge and we obsess over it until it stops being a challenge. When I heard that humanity had joined the Galactic Defense Force, that we were the new species trying to prove ourselves worthy of inclusion, I knew I had to be part of that. Because if there's one thing humans understand, it's being the underdog who has to work twice as hard to earn half the respect." Drakkar regarded her silently for a long moment. Then he looked at me. "Vex, Your assessment. I chose my words carefully. In Trinian tactical doctrine, we classify threats by their immediate danger versus their sustainable danger. A shock trooper presents immediate danger through overwhelming force, but a sniper presents sustainable danger, the ability to inflict casualties consistently over extended periods while remaining undetected and unengaged. If Cruz represents a standard example of human marksmanship potential, then we have categorized humans incorrectly in our threat assessments. Explain, Drakkar commanded. We assumed humans would fill support roles, technical positions, areas where their lack of physical advantages wouldn't matter. But if their cultural development has produced a population with widespread familiarity with precision weapons, if they have literally millions of civilians who practice marksmanship as recreation, then they represent a strategic asset we did not anticipate, not as frontline troops, but as force multipliers. One human sniper positioned correctly could influence an entire battlefield without ever being detected. Elena looked uncomfortable with the analysis, but she did not contradict it. Drakkar's mandibles clicked again. An astute observation. The Galactic Defense Force has operated for 400 cycles under certain assumptions about how different species contribute to military effectiveness. Humans have been here for less than 10 cycles. We placed them where we thought they would fit, not where they might excel. He turned back to Elena. You're reassigned effective immediately. You'll join the Advanced Reconnaissance Training Program. Your skills will be documented, analyzed, and used to develop new training protocols. You may also be asked to instruct other recruits, human and non-human, in precision marksmanship techniques. Questions? Just one, sir. Will I see actual deployment, or am I being turned into a training curiosity? Drakkar's expression shifted into what I recognized as a predatory smile. Oh, you will deploy, Cruz. The galaxy is a dangerous place, and specialists with your capabilities don't sit in classrooms for long. But first, we need to understand if you're an anomaly, or if humanity has been hiding an entire military doctrine in plain sight, disguised as sporting competitions and civilian hobbies. I'm not an anomaly, sir, Elena said quietly. I'm just someone who took a hobby seriously. Back home, there are competition shooters who make me look like a beginner. There are hunters who've been reading wind and estimating range since they were children. There are military veterans who've forgotten more about fieldcraft than I'll ever learn. If you want to see what humans can really do, wait until some of them start arriving with actual combat experience combined with our cultural background in marksmanship. The implications of that statement settled over the observation station like a heavy gravity field. I thought about Earth, a planet of 8 billion humans. If even a tiny fraction of them possessed skills comparable to Elena's, if even 0.1% had spent years refining their ability to place projectiles with precision, that was 8 million potential snipers. 8 million individuals who could influence battlefields from distances where conventional forces couldn't respond. 8 million quiet, patient, dedicated shooters who treated killing at long range as a solvable problem rather than an impressive feat. Drakkar seemed to be having similar thoughts. Dismissed. Cruz, report to Building 7, Room 312 tomorrow at 0800 for in-processing into the advanced program. Bring your gear and prepare for an extended training cycle. You're about to become very busy. Yes, sir. Thank you, sir. Elena saluted, collected her equipment, and departed with the same unpretentious efficiency she had displayed throughout. After she left, Drakkar turned to me with an expression I had never seen on his scarred features. Uncertainty mixed with something that might have been concern. We mocked her rifle setup, he said quietly. All those attachments, all that customization. We assumed it was compensation for inadequacy, but it wasn't compensation. It was optimization. She built that weapon to extend her capabilities to their absolute maximum, then trained until she could utilize every fraction of performance it offered. Yes, sir, I agreed. And if human military doctrine follows similar patterns, if they approach warfare with the same obsessive refinement they apply to their hobbies, then we have underestimated them catastrophically, Drakkar finished. Not because they're stronger or faster or more advanced, but because they're willing to dedicate absurd amounts of time and resources to becoming exceptional at very specific tasks. They turn limitations into specializations. He pulled up a star map showing human-controlled space. It wasn't impressive compared to the major powers, just a few dozen systems, a relatively new addition to galactic civilization. I'm going to recommend a comprehensive review of human capabilities, Drakkar continued. Not just military records, but cultural analysis. If their civilians treat complex skills as entertainment, what does that tell us about their potential military applications? If a random recruit with no formal military training can perform at specialist levels, what happens when they start sending us their actual professionals? I had no answer. None of us did. What we had witnessed was not superior technology or genetic advantage. It was something more subtle and perhaps more dangerous, a species that became exceptional through pure stubborn dedication. They took their weaknesses and worked around them. They found what they could do and pushed it to extremes. 3 days later, I received a message from Drakkar. He had accessed Earth's databases and found something he thought I should see. It was footage from a human competition called the Precision Rifle Series Championship. I watched humans engage targets at distances exceeding 2 kilometers. I watched them calculate solutions accounting for wind, temperature, barometric pressure, even the curvature of their planet. I watched them do this not for military purposes, not for survival, but for points and trophies and personal satisfaction. And now they were here, joining our military, bringing all that accumulated knowledge and cultural obsession with them. 6 months after Elena's evaluation, I saw her again. She wore the insignia of a certified GDF sniper instructor. She was leading a class of 20 recruits, 15 of them non-human, teaching them the fundamentals of long-range marksmanship. I stopped to observe. The recruits looked skeptical at first, just as we all had. This small human was going to teach them advanced combat techniques. Then she took them to the range. She showed them what proper fundamentals looked like. She demonstrated reading environmental conditions. She explained ballistic mathematics in terms anyone could understand. And then, because some lessons require demonstration, she engaged a target at 1,850 meters in variable wind conditions with 3 shots. All 3 hits clustered within a circle smaller than my fist. The skepticism evaporated. The recruits leaned forward, suddenly eager to learn from this unassuming human who had just made the impossible look routine. As I walked away, I realized something that would have seemed absurd just months earlier. The galaxy had not been mocking Elena's rifle setup. The galaxy had been staring at the future of asymmetric warfare without recognizing it. They had mocked her right up until the moment an instructor whispered a truth that should have been obvious. Only snipers move like that. Only humans, it seemed, turned marksmanship into a cultural phenomenon, and now the galaxy would learn what that meant. If you made it this far, hit like for more stories that question everything you think you know about humanity. This is Ascension of Man. See you in the next one.